This is CJ with the GOAT Sports Talk, just coming into some NBA conspiracy news. If you don't know what's been going on in terms of free agency, we've actually heard there's been rumors going on. This is from ESPN.com saying that in an attempt to knock off Warriors, teams are targeting Andre Iguodala. All right, now this is something that is would make sense because if you look at even a situation which a lot of people probably don't remember, but years back, even though it was more of it was done to kind of try and help slow down the growth of the Rockets at the time. This is pre James Harden, okay, back when they had a decent team. The team was usually even during the time before James Harden got to the Rockets, the team was like usually a 500 team, especially after Yao Ming was gone and Tracy McGrady. They were no longer a contender. Of course, that team had a lot of injury issues, but there was a time when you had Chandler Parsons, who was up for free agency for the Rockets. He was a second round pick, which allowed him to get into free agency a lot earlier. And the Rockets and he ended up playing like a first round pick. He was very good for the Rockets during that time. But the Rockets wanted to really keep him. They offered him a good deal, but he didn't take it at the time. Then Mark Cuban, being petty against the Rockets because he wanted to hurt the Rockets, because this is a time when pretty much Dallas is on the decline. Everybody pretty much is gone. They already won their title. A lot of the players were out of there. You had like Tyson Chandler, I believe at that time he had went to the New York Knicks to get a deal. Other players had left or retired or whatever have you. And basically what happened was the Rockets were on the rise and they were doing good draft picks. If you know, the Rockets are very good with draft picks and player development. And they just find a way to just use players that are not as valued and make them more valued. And what Mark Cuban did is he decided to give a huge offer to Chandler Parsons at the time, who was a restricted free agent. And of course, the Rockets couldn't match the deal. And he ended up being in Dallas, and the rest is history with that situation. Now, one of the reasons why he overpaid Chandler Parsons was, one, he had the salary cap to do it. Two, he did not want Houston to continue to grow as a rival within the same division. So in this same instance, what makes sense is that a team attempting to knock off the Warriors in the Western Conference, you are now going to have to play a different ball game. And that's what people don't understand is going on. This is what could happen. One, the cap space that's available for the Golden State Warriors. One, Durant is in his prime. Okay, Durant already has his title. See, a lot of stuff is going on right now this offseason that wasn't expected to probably occur. But as we're getting forward, you're seeing things could possibly happen. Everybody knows that Stephen Curry deserves a max deal. I believe it's going to be somewhere 5 years, $205 million, somewhere crazy around there, because of the amount of years he's been in the league and what he will be eligible for. It's like 5 years, $200 million. It's something ridiculous, right? Now, Durant also wants to get a long-term deal. He's coming off of an injury where he broke his foot back when he was with Oklahoma City, and he broke his foot. Then he came back and he had the issue he had another injury leading into the playoffs. Even though he's snapped dab in the middle of his prime and he could still, command a big contract next year if he decided to just sit on a player option, it makes more sense for him to opt out and sign a long-term deal right now. Now, this is what's going on. You're convincing a guy who's in the middle of his prime to take a lower amount of money per year. And what I mean by that is, like LeBron, when he went to Miami, he was 25 going on 26 when he took that deal. Or he was like 26, that season. And basically he could take such a little bit less money during that time because he did feel that he was going to get another long-term deal. Of course, you know what LeBron's been doing. He's been doing these, 2-year deals with a 1-year player option, and that's pretty much what he's on right now with the Cleveland Cavaliers, where he's on a deal where he has a player option at the end of it. and the player option will be the following season where he can opt out into free agency. And of course, I believe that if he goes into free agency, even when he's 33 years old, he will be able to sign a 5-year, $200-something million deal with Cleveland if he decides to stay. No doubt about it that any team is going to max him for 5 years, even at the age of 33. They're going to do it. But in this instance with the Warriors, they're in some trouble. They could be in some trouble with this because, one, if they're not able to keep Iguodala, they're going to lose some experience on their bench and a guy that is a very versatile defender and who could play point. He's not a great shooter, but he's decent enough that he can hit him at times when he's open, if he's honest. He's losing. He's still athletic, but he's losing his durability. He's just not as durable as he used to be, and he had injury problems this year. But a team that's trying to compete, it would make sense that if you can afford a $15 a year for 3 years, which I think that's the kind of deal he can get, and maybe if you put at the end of it, the third year, maybe a team option, then that could work. I'm pretty sure that he will negotiate if he does leave to a team, that he does get a player option after probably 3 years. He's like about 33 years old, so he probably, you could probably say maybe you could get some things out of him. But the thing about it is, if you're going to pay somebody that kind of money, he's either got to be off the bench. He's got to be your sixth man of the year type player. He's got to come off the bench and be ready to get going. He's got to be putting up 15 off the bench and about 5 rebounds, 5 assists. That's how I look at it. If you're going to give him that kind of bread, but at the end of the day, for him, he wants that financial security. And I believe that Andre Iguodala, although he would want to stay with the Warriors, it's just not financially feasible to get the kind of deal that he could get elsewhere. And that's the reason why when you look into this article, it says that Andre Iguodala has become the foremost target in an attempt to weaken the Golden State Warriors' chokehold on the NBA, league sources told ESPN. It says the Minnesota Timberwolves, San Antonio Spurs, LA Clippers, Philadelphia 76ers, Orlando Magic, Brooklyn Nets, Utah Jazz are among the teams interested in the 2015 Finals MVP, sources told ESPN. Now, I think the only way that Andre Iguodala will go to a non-playoff competitor is if they give him the big bucks. And that would be Brooklyn Nets. I mean, they would not be going to the playoffs. And of course, I would say from the team, the Brooklyn Nets and the Orlando Magic. I believe the other teams are potential playoff teams. Now, Philadelphia does need some older veterans, and I think that would be a good pick. I think that because of the fact they got so many guys on rookie deals, it would be worth it for them to get Andre Iguodala back and to help groom those young players, teach them to be a professional, and almost basically pay them almost like a player coach. Because you got to think about it. If you're going to pay them that kind of bread for 3 years, let's say, those guys' contracts are not going to be up anytime soon. So you can afford to kind of make them more of a player coach. You can basically have them come off the bench, play them 20 to 25 minutes a game. And if they have any injuries, you sometimes start them or whatever. And you can get away with that. Plus, Andre Iguodala already played for Philadelphia. And, I believe the way he went out, a lot of people didn't like it. It was kind of it was kind of different. So it's kind of like, at the end of the day, I think that he can overlook that because money talks. At the end of the day, you have, a situation where you have a team that he can help build up. And that team is like, it's kind of like reminds you of the Warriors, man. Like, to be honest, like they could be Warriors East. That's how good the talent Philadelphia has right now. It's insane. Like, I don't think people really understand how good those players can be in the next 4 to 5 years if they were to stay together. I mean, that team could be insane if they can stay healthy. I think really if they stay healthy, because all those guys that are on that team, all those guys love the game. All those guys are in the gym working on their game, and they all seem to get along. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid have a great relationship with each other. Now you got Markelle Fultz there. So, I think that they're all going to be very good with one another. I mean, that's a good group to have to start off a young nucleus that you can build around, and they need a mix of veteran players. Now, as far as Minnesota Timberwolves does have the money in part because two of their very good players that they had prior to Jimmy Butler going there is the is, of course, Karl Anthony Towns and Andre Wiggins. And Andre Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns, of course, are on their rookie deal. What does that mean? They got cap space. They got Jang, who's still also on his rookie deal. Of course, they're paying Ricky Rubio, which Ricky Rubio should have been shouldn't even been on the team anymore. It's amazing he's still there. So Ricky Rubio, they're paying him some bread, but not a lot. And then they're paying, of course, Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler's getting paid under $20 million. Nowadays a max deal is like 30. You know what I'm saying? I mean, max deal is like 30, 35, really 35. Moving forward, max deals are going to be like $35 to $40 million a year. Okay, the money is just ridiculous right now. So, yeah, that's a team he could go to. They can afford him, and he would give them some veteran leadership and another defender that's versatile alongside of Jimmy Butler on the perimeter that can get at the Warriors in the event that they meet up in the playoffs. Let's say they end up being an 8 seed. Let's say the Warriors somehow end up being a 2nd seed. That can happen because there's a lot of good teams in the West that can win 60 plus games. So then they might beat them, and you might be able to put up a series against them and kind of grow from there as a club, especially with those younger guys. Now, as far as with San Antonio, I don't believe San Antonio should do it because, one, the money to me doesn't make any sense as to why San Antonio would actually go after him. To me, you already got 2 guys at your wing spot that are pretty good. Of course, you got Kawhi Leonard, who was a Finals MVP candidate or nominee, and then you have Simmons. Man, Simmons was probably one of the steals of the year as far as a guy who's gotten some playing time this year. He looked very good. He's athletic. He's about 6'6", 6'7". He can attack the rim. His jumper actually is pretty solid. It's not great, but it's good enough. It keeps the teams honest. And within that system, to me, it's I would invest in him if I'm San Antonio. I would want to keep him and groom him. When his deal is up, I think he's a $15 million a year player. Ben Simmons. I think he could be on that level. Plus, he's younger. So to me, I would choose him over. I would choose to keep him over even Iguodala at this particular age. So to me, he doesn't make sense going to Spurs. Clippers, that doesn't make any sense because the Clippers has all that money tied up in right now DeAndre Jordan. So unless they move a piece and they need some versatility, you can get him. But I'm not a big fan of getting older players that are getting hurt. It's one thing to be an old player and you're still got it. You're still healthy. For example, Jamal Crawford is old, but Jamal Crawford doesn't get injured. And he still plays he's still productive. So when you got a productive player that's older that doesn't get hurt, to me that's okay. I don't mind that. But when a guy's having the issues that he's having right now, how do you expect him to get better health wise when he could have gotten healthy all year last year? He couldn't. He had one good game again in game 5 or in game 5 of the finals, and that was really it. Other than that, it wasn't like he was really that much of an impact on the game. So I just don't get it. So, of course, Utah Jazz, that could make some sense. If they lose Gordon Hayward, then they would have money to sign Iguodala. But I just don't like the pickup again because he has to come off the bench. You can't start a guy like Iguodala no more. It's just he's not what he used to be to where you can start him. Unless there's something that, he could fix this offseason physically and he can start. For some reason, I just can't see him playing 30 minutes a game anymore at this particular point in his career, and you can't trust him to me as a starter as of right now. He's still a very good player, but he needs to be coming off the bench more than starting and being part of your focal point of your team. So I'm gonna go ahead and just read a little bit of the article so you can kind of get the gist of what it says. It says, "It is not yet known if Iguodala will take meetings. A significant number of personnel within NBA circles have come to the conclusion that rather than building a super team, it must more economically feasible and expeditions to just pick away talent from the Bay Area juggernauts." And that makes so much sense, man. No one, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I was seeing the formulation of the Golden State Warriors over the last year, especially when they added Durant and what they had, I was like, wow, how's the team gonna assemble another team that can compete with a team that has Iguodala coming off the bench and Sean Livingston? Then they added McGee for the cheap, which they don't need him to be the focal point of the offense, but he keeps the defenses honest because they could lob over the top to him, and he's a decent rim protector. He's not the brightest of players to a lot of people, but I think in some ways he's in kind of I think that people kind of like got on JaVale McGee a little bit too much, because I do believe if he's a starter, which I think the problem started from George Karl. I'm gonna keep it real, man. George Karl, I believe, was the one who actually hampered the potential of JaVale McGee, because I believe when JaVale McGee was on that team, I think that he could have been able to have played more, and I think he would have put up more numbers. And teams are very funny. Like coaches, if a coach doesn't like a particular player, they can hurt them. They can hurt them, not play them as many minutes, and it can have some effect on that player. So JaVale McGee being there, that whole team was just built. It was to beat this year's Cavaliers. Like anybody who just thinks that Cavaliers really had a chance, they had to understand that the Cavaliers had to basically almost play a perfect game. And I even said it that Cavaliers had to steal at least one of the two games from in the first two games in order to have a chance. I believe that as soon as they lost two games, even though they're Golden State was holding court, I said at that point you now have to win 4 of the next 6. That was not going to be possible to do it against the Golden State Warriors. So I believe this strategy is a very smart strategy, and I believe that Sean Livingston may be offered a deal that they can't keep him either. So expect the Golden State Warriors to be somewhat weakened, but one thing about Golden State is their player development is amazing. Ian Clark, a lot of their young players, they develop them immediately. They play them. They make sure to put them in games and play them and develop them, and they have confidence in them. Steve Kerr is not like a guy like Mark Jackson who would have held back younger players. Especially younger players that were not starters. Of course, lottery picks get they get a lot of playing time, but others don't. And I think that they are going to have to now go back into player development. They did have a draft. Off the top of my mind, I can't remember who the player is, but they did draft, a player or so, I think, in the second round. And, they're going to develop whoever they can. And there's talent around there. A lot of GMs are very lazy. A lot of player personnel executives, they're very lazy in the league, to be honest. And there's talent out there if you want to build up your bench. It's just that a lot of these teams, they just don't have the type of people that have the know-how of where to get players from. And that's where you got the teams like the Rockets and the Golden State Warriors, that they can build up, they can get talent and develop it and make them play at a high level, just like a Patrick Beverly. I mean, they get players and they develop those guys, and they give them playing time and they development. Look at Capella. Capella has showed himself to be a good center in the league, especially for the Rockets, and he's a young player. But what do? They played him, So, I mean, you got these type of things going on, So I'm gonna just kind of read on further, because this is a very interesting article. It says Draymond Green and Klay Thompson are under contract for a couple of more seasons, while Iguodala, Curry, and Durant are unrestricted free agents. And see, Durant, I think Durant's loyalty now has to stay with Golden State, because really there's nothing that Durant can really do, to be honest. And what I mean by that is that Durant has to basically stay there. So if it means that he has to take a slight pay cut, he's going to do it. Now, what I think he could do is they might just let him opt in, but I don't think he needs. I think if you're his agent, you're going to tell him, take this guaranteed money. First of all, agents want guaranteed money because that means more commission for them each year of that contract. But the reason why Durant should listen to his agent in maximizing his money is because of his history of injuries. You just can't take that chance that you're gonna. What if he has another injury and he re-aggravates that foot injury, and he ends up having foot problems like Ilgauskas, and he can never be 100% again. He ends up like Yao Ming. I mean, ask the Rockets, man. I live in Houston, bro. Okay, ask the Rockets about Yao Ming and his feet. Okay, because if Yao Ming was healthy, Yao Ming would have Yao Ming with Tracy McGrady would have led the Rockets to at least 1 or 2 NBA Finals appearances. I mean, that's how good some of their teams that they had with Artest and Shane Battier. I mean, they had some players. They had Kyle Lowry at one point. They had Aaron Brooks. This is when they were Aaron Brooks in his prime. They had some decent players, man, on that squad. If you look back at that team, Luis Scola, like, come on, man. Scola was giving you, like, man, Scola was balling. I mean, the squad was ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? But they could not stay healthy. Okay? But if Durant can get his contract now, so to me, you know, Durant is in a tough position because if he opts in, he's going to have to hope that he can be healthy that whole season. And then if he needs to explore free agency and leave Golden State, that's okay. Maybe you go back to, you know, to Washington, you know, to the DMV area where you're from and actually go play with the Wizards and bring something to your hometown team. So that could possibly happen. You know, I think he has that as one of his options, but I don't think he can do that this year. I just think it'll just look bad if he went there 1 year, won a championship, you know, for a team that could have won without him, and leaves. It just looks funny. At least to stay there 2 years, and then if you gotta go and you say, you know what, y'all don't got the money, but y'all squad is still good, y'all be able to do well without me, I'm gonna just go ahead and go back home. You can use that going home narrative as a reason to go to Washington and kind of build from there. And he already maybe have a title or two under his belt, and he can probably try and win one for Washington and be a legend over there. You know, so we're going to go ahead and continue reading this, you know, because this is very interesting. It's a little bit longer than what I usually do, but I just wanted to give y'all some good stuff. So it says, however, it's virtually a lock that the latter two aren't venturing elsewhere. Those individuals make up the Hamptons Five, a nickname for the players involved in the recruiting of Durant in the Hamptons last summer. The open market, according to rival executive, poses a serious threat of stealing the 33-year-old veteran from the defending champs come July 1st, the first day of free agency period, which is, we're going to see that. That's going to be some news going on around that time. And of course, you know, there's a lot of trading that wants to go down too. So if a team wants to sign a particular player and they got to move somebody else to sign them, the trades are going to be more likely flying a lot quicker. Now, it says the Timberwolves recently acquired all-star wingman Jimmy Butler to jumpstart their acceleration. And if they're able to procure Iguodala, head coach Tom Thibodeau would have a roster equipped for a deep playoff run. ESPN's Mark Stein first reported that the Spurs are attempting to create salary flexibility to pursue Chris Paul this summer, and a combo acquisition of the Clippers all-star guard and Iguodala have been discussed internally. Sources say the Spurs have made LaMarcus Aldridge and Danny Green available for trade, according to sources. And that's actually, you know what, I'm not going to lie. Like, for the Spurs, that would be a good look because, one, you get a versatile wing player in Iguodala, even though he'd be coming off the bench. But one thing that Iguodala reminds me of to a certain degree, even though he's not as a good shooter as him, is Ginobili. You know, Ginobili was still effective at that age. And he was coming off the bench, even though he could have started easily, because Ginobili was one of the better two guards in the league for most of his career. And that would actually make a lot of sense, you know, to make that move, because what LaMarcus brings, it's not worth probably keeping in this coming NBA unless you're just strictly looking at how can you beat Golden State, you know, but I think that when you look at where the league's going, he's out there on an island against quicker players. You put a team out there that has a lot of quickness and he has to match up against other players that are way quicker than him. I just think it's just very difficult. Now, LaMarcus, I think if he wants to develop his value, he needs to hit that three ball. He needs to become a stretch four more as his career goes on, you know. I think that's what's going to allow him to be, you know, a player that's still dangerous on the floor, you know, ultimately, like, you know. But I think, you know, with him being disgruntled, I think it's better to move him. And I do believe that I would say they would have a slight upgrade with those two because, one, you get Chris Paul, who's the floor general. He's going to be able to create shots for the other players. And, in fact, he'll kind of remind you of that old Tony Parker, because people always talking about how, San Antonio, they have, you know, a certain system and they don't have one-on-one play. That's a lie. I've watched a lot of San Antonio basketball being in Houston. And when Tony Parker was in his prime, they would have him out there doing a lot of ISO work and creating. And I believe that they feel like they can get that out of Chris Paul. And guess what? Chris Paul is not going to have to play a ton of minutes as well, because they're usually going to keep a player like him under 30 minutes a game or around 30 minutes a game. And the way Popovich has his team set up, he trusts all his players. There's nobody that's on his team that he's not ready to just throw out there in any given situation. And that's how he builds his guys up. So going further on, I don't care about the Philadelphia as far as with that. We don't care about Utah. You know how it is. Let's go down to this part. Warriors backup point guard Sean Livingston is also a free agent and a key piece to the core. It is anticipated that he could command a salary of at least 10 and 12 million per year, and I do agree. I would say that Sean Livingston is worth about that much. That's the market value I would have given him. I know Iguodala is looking for 15 a year, and at least 2 years, hopefully 3 years. That's what he's looking for as far as his retirement parachute. I think he wants to get about 45 to $50 million over the course of 3 years, and I think that's what he wants to retire on. And pretty much probably play on a team that can win a championship or compete for a title, in the next year or two. So Sean Livingston, I think that he can get that out in the market. I really do believe when his versatility to me is just too good. He has to leave, man. To me, I know that they're going to be trying to say, hey, look, you got to come back. But if you've won 2 titles with a team already, you've been there for years. Yes, they help develop you, but at the end of the day, their priority is their big players, man. I mean, their 2 big ones that are available is Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant. And these guys got to understand this is all a business. It's not personal. I think it's time for Sean Livingston to go to another team. And I would also say that he would be a good fit on up-and-coming playoff teams or contenders or even a contender coming off of the bench. And there's a lot of teams. Some of those teams listed up at the top were some of the teams that I think he would be a good fit for. So it says, with Durant electing to opt out and take less than his maximum, it allows the Warriors to have a chance at their bird rights to re-sign Iguodala to deal far more comparable to what he'd likely see on the open market. However, if the 2 sides can't reach an agreement, the Warriors can't use that money to allocate to an outside player of his stature. Basically, what they mean by this is that when you have bird rights to a player, that means that player is someone that you can sign an extension to, even if it goes over the cap, because they'll be willing to pay the luxury tax. So by Durant opting out of his deal, it'll allow them to still sign him, over the cap, even if Durant gets an extension, because they've retained the bird rights to him. But they cannot get a same player. Let's say another player that they want to get is asking for $15 million a year, because there's a lot of free agents, which we'll probably go over, who the free agents are, maybe tomorrow or Thursday. We'll probably go over the free agents list as well, so you can get an idea of who's out there. But they won't be able to get a player they can only get players that they can keep and go over the cap. So to me, if I'm the Golden State Warriors, your goal should be to keep at least one of the 2. But don't think you can keep both Sean Livingston and Andre Iguodala. It's just not happening. It's just the money-wise, it's just not going to fit. Okay, so it says here, and that's what makes the free agent situation so intriguing. It's potentially addition by subtraction. If a suitor succeeds in luring Iguodala away, that would not only improve the team that secures them, but it would improve the league's chance of regaining ground on the Warriors. So that's pretty much it, man. The Warriors are definitely having problems in free agency, and it's going to be an issue. I mean, I didn't think it would be that much of an issue. I didn't think about it like that, before the series was over, but now you can see what's going on. So that's pretty much it, man. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. This is a long one, but, thank you for your patience. Hey, we got more on this. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm out.